Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Lloyd Christmas, and I'm joined by Harry Dunn, and this is Brian E. Roach. This is not Dumb and Dumber, but hey, old buddy, my good buddy.
What's up, man?
Old pal, how you doing?
How you doing, old buddy, old pal, old friend of mine?
Yeah, I was...
Call me dumb.
Well, Dumb and Dumber. Just the question of is who is dumber or dumberer?
That's a good question, actually. Who is dumberer?
Yeah, I don't know. We'll leave that to debate. I'm sure we'll have plenty of opportunities to take the title from one another as this show progresses.
And I'm sure that by the end of this, our lovely loyal listeners will inform us which one of us is which.
Yeah, that's true too. Just be careful. It's always Brian. So
No, it's not.
That's always great, and we're never wrong, by the way. So lots of interesting things going on. We're flying by the seat of our pants, I think, because now we know. We went from hashtag we want to play to what most of the teams now having a COVID-19 or health protocol or whatever the heck it is that they're calling these things approved by the league. And teams are going to start showing up for training camp. In fact, reporting date for the Steelers is today, July 28th. All veterans can report to camp beginning on July 28th, must test negative for COVID-19 3 times during this window between now, July 28th, and August 2nd, which is next, or this upcoming Sunday, I should say. Virtual meetings will take place during this time. The final 2 days of this period will include physicals and equipment fitting. And we got some more news and stuff too, so I guess it's time to get excited. Football is back. The only thing that's kind of a damper so far, Brian, is I'm really hoping, do we get any rival videos? I mean, nobody's at St. Vincent to report on this stuff anymore. And I know these guys aren't necessarily staying there. They're going wherever. You've got some players. You've even got baseball that's getting messed up. Games getting canceled now with some positive tests and things like that. You got players opting out. We've got a lot to chew on today. So I guess we should be excited that players are starting to report. The Steelers already have someone, and I was surprised by this. I thought they weren't going to actually report who was testing what, but or maybe he didn't. Did he test? Arian Springs? He was just placed on the list, though. And then that's right. The thing. Yeah, this is all a mess now, too. So there's going to be expanded practice squads. There's this reserve COVID-19 list. Arian Springs, he was someone that was in the XFL. He was, in and out with the NFL with different practice squads, Chiefs, Browns, Saints, and Raiders. And, this is one of the players. So the reserve COVID-19 list, this is something the NFL's created. The NFLPA, the Players Association, they've all had to get together and try and figure something out in order to have a season and for it to be health and safety of players, including players who are opting out. But here is one of the things. It's the reserve COVID-19 list for a player who either tests positive for COVID-19 or has been quarantined after having been in close contact with an infected person or persons. If a player falls into either of these categories, their club is required to immediately place the player on this reserve COVID-19 list per agreed upon policy by the NFL and NFLPA. Clubs are not permitted to comment on players' medical status other than referring to roster status. So, clubs may not disclose whether a player is in quarantine or is positive for COVID-19. So, you got to put all this out. In fact, I was already confused about this. That's why I had to read it and read it for everyone else so they understand. This could just mean that somebody in his family, I don't know if he's a married gentleman, if he has a girlfriend or, maybe parents, somebody that I guess would be in his household or somebody he came into contact with. Maybe he tested positive, and then he has to report this under the rules and go onto this list, and then you're going to be in the quarantine. Man, this is going to be something that's very intriguing, and I want to start with this and the opt-outs. Man, the New England Patriots, if we already thought it was going to be a challenging season for Bill Belichick, There's like 5-6 guys.
He doesn't have any players, yeah.
Yeah, everybody. And not only just players, but like his mainstays, like guys like Patrick Chung and Donta Hightower. And this is going to be very intriguing to see. You talk about coaches like Bill Belichick and, their greatness or how great of a coach they are, or great jobs that they do. This is going to be a testament to Mike Tomlin's legacy, too, which, we have plans to talk about that later this week as well. And, you thought last year he was in the conversation for Coach of the Year. Start pulling some guys off of this team, whether it be by opting out or you're in week 3 and now all of a sudden you lose. Let's throw a name out there. Let's say you lose Juju Smith-Schuster and he's got to go into – I'm not sure where CDC is yet, Brian. We've heard 10 days now.
Right. 14
days. I'm not sure how long somebody's got to be on here or whether they have to test or whatever because, it's supposed to be – this thing could be dormant for up to 14 days was our initial information. That's probably the benchmark we'll just use here on the show, even though we've heard otherwise, even though that could change. This is a constantly changing, topic, which is why we're bringing it up once again today. But just imagine, all of a sudden it's not like the ankle injury, you got 2 to 3 weeks. You're assuming that the guy hopefully could come back, but he's going to miss like 2 games with a positive test. Maybe.
Yep.
It's going to be a very challenging.
Yeah.
And that's why they're expanding. They've cut down the rosters, but they've also expanded them. So they went from 90 to 80. And I assume that's because of no preseason games now, which we hadn't mentioned yet, but that is final. No preseason games. You got, I'll throw this in there too. They signed Wendell Smallwood, running back, formerly of the Eagles. The Eagles, a team that the Steelers play frequently in the preseason. This is how Mike Tomlin, he scouts a lot of these guys the same way. He's scouting both teams, not just his own in the preseason. And now you don't have this tool. So while some opportunities are being taken away, you get a guy that's a high caliber or high profile or a starting player in the NFL that opts out or ends up on this list. It does create opportunities for other guys. But, man, this could be some messy football once again in 2020 when I look at this and we talk about the way the Steelers were dropping like flies, especially on offense last year.
Yeah, this is going to be, it's funny because it's already started with Major League Baseball. It's starting to happen with the NBA. Games are getting canceled because players are testing and positive results are coming in. You do wonder. I mean, how is all of this really going to play out? Where what kind of advantages, disadvantages are teams going to have? When will Bill Belichick start shipping coronavirus through the mail to team facilities in order to force whatever? Or when will he learn to, hack the health net so that he can falsify positive things?
He's doing this already. He's probably behind the Chinese seed thing that's going around. Did you get any of the Chinese?
Yeah, the Chinese seed thing that is going to everybody's houses. Yeah.
Oh man, I know somebody who got it. It's unbelievable. I thought that was just like some made-up internet thing. Like I'm looking for The Onion or one of these satire sites, and somebody literally this has happened. So Google that in your spare time, folks. It's something that's really crazy. It's going on, and nobody knows why. But it's probably Belichick.
There you go. It is. If anybody is going to find a way to get a competitive advantage out of this, it's going to be Bill Belichick. We've seen games be postponed in Major League Baseball because of testing. We've seen all of these all kinds of different circumstances occur, and so you can't help but wonder how this is all going to play out. If somebody gets a positive test back, and how does that impact the way that the team plays? Are they going to have? Is it not? It's not like these guys aren't around each other. You know what I mean? So if one guy gets a positive test, and what happens if now you get 10% of your team down with it? I just don't know. And does that mean you lose games for the those 2-week periods? Are they going to be delayed? Are they going to be postponed? I mean, it's a little easier with baseball. They're used to postponing games because they can't play in the rain.
Yeah. Well, wait a minute. What was that game? Was that Buffalo and they did the Tuesday night game or whatever that got played, and they were thinking about playing it in Heinz Field, I think, and then they moved it to Detroit. It wasn't that like a Tuesday night game, and it was like such a rarity, like it had not happened in a bazillion years. That was just a few years ago, and That's
I
some of
sort
the,
of remember that.
That's some of the scheduling that you have. But then you also have a lot of the college football is not going to be played. And, they play on every day of the week, some of the conferences, but some of the conferences are shuttering it entirely. There's some that are saying they might play in spring. This has actually happened even in my sport with, I referee collegiate soccer, and I went from 30 games, and am I down to 2 or am I down to 3? And we were just talking about this in the back rooms. I was down to 6. And that was just a couple hours ago, and now I'm down to 2 or 3, I think. And I'm not going to make mention of the conferences. Some of them are said they're going to play conference games. Some of the things have got realigned, so you would have Division I schools. They're saying they're still going to play conference games. Most of the smaller schools, Division III, they're out already. Some of the other ones have said they're going to postpone to the spring. So it's mainly your D1s, and they're going to only play conference because they're trying to limit who's all in that bubble, who's all in that inner circle. Now, some of that is also attributed to the actual not only just the travel and who you come to contact with, but the actual scheduling and how far apart these games are going to be scheduled now. Are they going to be, they were traditionally Friday, Sundays there, and now they're trying to kind of space them out a little bit more so that if there's anyone who comes into contact, it just doesn't spread like wildfire, I guess, is the thinking behind it. And it's going to be interesting to see with the NFL. This is particularly, would this affect anything with the Thursday night games where you have such a short turnaround, and if Thursday nights will still be the same or even be a thing as you go into the season. I'm sure they're planning to go as planned, as originally planned, but as we know, you see the college sports start to move some of the things around, and you had a lot of the college football games. Like I said, you get some of these wacky games on a Wednesday, maybe even Thursday night, even when Thursday night football is going on. Usually Friday nights or Friday night lights, that's your high school stuff. But Saturdays are going to look pretty bare, and I kind of wonder if in some circumstances, some of these Thursday night games, if things are going to get moved around. Like you said, how can you postpone an entire game if there's just let's say 10 players. Let's say the Steelers are playing the Ravens, and you got 10 Steelers on this whatever list, and it's a variety of players, including special teamers and maybe a starter or two, and the Ravens have like 7. At what point do you say this compromises? This is the clause in the Major League Baseball deal, too, I think, for the season. It talks about competitive balance. At what point do you call it quits on maybe compromising a competitive balance, with the NFL, and just, I don't know, just how different might this look? Are they just going to try and press through all 17 weeks of the season? This is set in stone and we're not changing anything. I don't know. I mean, you have flex scheduling already when it comes to primetime games and that. Can you really move and shift too many games around? Like, I know you get a short turnaround time. I was just talking about Thursday Night Football and how that, moves and it's a real short week. But how can you expect teams to be able to play on more than one short week? That's kind of like kind of understood, and it's not very well liked among the players already. But there's going to be some available TV time, and I know Roger Goodell likes that. If you remember the Steelers, what was that? Steelers and Chiefs? And that whole thing, and they moved it into prime time, and they put the Steelers at a tremendous disadvantage for the next game because of doing that. You could see that having an impact on the season too.
Yeah, it's going to be, and even though we're having this conversation, we're still not even at a point where we know for sure there's going to even be a season. We make that assumption, and they certainly are progressing that way. But things with excuse me, the world today is just things seems to do change pretty consistently. So who knows? But even assuming that we get a season, are we gonna have the cardboard cutout fans? Are we gonna have whatever else goes on? As you said, we've already eliminated preseason, which is nobody's crying their eyes over except for the players who may have had a shot at making the roster by being able to play in the preseason and now may have no shot. But it's as each day goes by, and as I said, as players continue to opt out of the season, I mean, where does the balance come in, right? Where does the tipping point occur? Is there a specific point? Like, as we talked about, the Patriots don't have hardly any players left now. Half their players opted out today or something. I mean, it wasn't quite that bad, but it felt that way. But what if it gets to that point? What if you've got a 60-man surplus of players, but 30 of them decide to opt out? Where do you go from there? I mean, yeah, there's scrubs out there who are probably willing to do anything to get the paycheck, but what does that end up doing to the competitive balance, as you said, of a league where now you've got a team basically filled with replacement players and a team that's not? Where is the actual, no holds barred, be all end all point where you simply have to say, wow, the decision's been made for us. We can't continue.
Yeah, and here's something that's very interesting from Jenna Lane of ESPN, and she's reporting more than 70% of NFL players fall into an at-risk category for COVID-19, including having a high body mass index, or there's certain genes or traits with being African American. Obviously, quite a few. That's probably the exact number of African American players in the NFL. I thought it was in somewhere in the 60 to 70 range. So if you're angry at a player for choosing to protect him, well, I don't need to get into all this. If you're angry at a player for choosing to protect himself and his family, you need to reassess your life's priorities. So she's taking a jab, I guess, at people who are taking it out on some of these guys. And you and I have had this discussion too. This wasn't where I wanted to go, but I felt it necessary to reiterate the rest of the tweet. The things that are in place for football is health and safety. And we know players have had a love-hate relationship with health safety, even with concussion protocols and changing helmets and equipment and all these other things. This is just like another piece to the puzzle here with the whole COVID thing. And you get some guys that probably have some very legitimate concerns, some of the guys that stepped away. And you talk about the one offensive lineman from the Chiefs who has a medical background from his college education. And there's things like that are going to play into that. There's some people that may have some personal experience. We've even talked about whether some guys would just rather sit on the couch and they haven't had to deal with mini camps and this and that. The Le'Veon Bell approach to the one-off season, not signing the tag. So you probably have some of that too. You're not going to be able to guess or say as to why. None of these guys, I don't think anybody's going to be dumb enough to just say, I'm just going to opt out and sit there. And as you mentioned, we talked about this in the back rooms, you mentioned $150,000 is a far cry. Now, some of them, though, if it's 70% and they're saying it's a higher or at risk or whatever, I don't know who makes this determination. I know it goes up to what, like is it 350 or is it 325? But it's a much more substantial sum. And then some of these guaranteed monies and contracts that roll over and all these other things, they're going to create a mess for years to come and seasons to come under a new CBA, no matter. And on top of that, if you don't have fans in the stands and teams making some less revenue and a cap tied to revenue, oh man, this is going to be there's just too much to unravel right here with that right now. But I do think she hits the nail on the head here. It's like, I don't want to be barking at anybody for not participating. Ultimately, it's their choice. If a guy wants to go and sit out or retire, which we've seen that happen too, then ultimately it's their choice. So you could be on you could be disappointed, or maybe it's not even disappointment, because if you're looking at it from a health concern, I would never say that I'm disappointed in the person for wanting to take care of their body and their family and respect the health of whoever's in their little bubble there. But maybe frustrated. Somebody will be like frustrated because you're going to see a star player go out. We'll just use New England for an example. Donta Hightower, I think he has a young child or one on the way, or maybe both. And he's a star player. You're going to be. The disappointment comes from you feel everybody feels their team's going to be a winner, have a chance at a Super Bowl, and then that's like one piece of the equation that's taken out that makes you maybe lesser of a competitor and lesser of a winner, and that's where you're going to sense some people are going to take this the wrong way, and I don't want anybody to take it the wrong way. It's like now we'll get into some of the Steelers individually and ask some questions here in just a second. So I'll let you talk on this too. But I think she's right about reassess your life's priorities. Just the truth of the matter is that you got a lot of trolls and complete a-holes on social media that will just take any opportunity that they can to be miserable and mouth off at people. And that's just the way it is, unfortunately.
Yeah, just to follow up on what you said with the one tweet, Ross Tucker from Ross Tucker NFL also basically said the similar sentiments. If you're thinking about criticizing a player who decides to opt out, do yourself a favor and don't do that. You have no idea what their health, family situation is or what their reasons may be. Sit this one out. Meaning the trolls. Just sit it out.
Well,
trolls.
let me add that to that real quick too. For some of these guys, $150,000 isn't anything. For some of these guys, it's a lot. Not everyone is a millionaire that's playing in the NFL, or at least not yet. And the average career is like 3 years if you make it that far. Rookie contract is 4, and you may be lucky. You're still paying bills and paying things out of pocket, and it depends on if you're smart with money. But not everyone's driving like a Lamborghini or something into practice, into training camp or whatever that they own themselves. There aren't a whole the amount of high rollers that people think exist just because they play on a professional sports team is kind of a myth. They may do better than me or you, but for what? 1 or 2 years, and then they may be back to being, what was Tommy Maddox doing for a while, selling insurance, right? That's the type of thing that happens. There's a short window there, and some of this is going to be because they want to protect that short window so they could earn some money next year and not have to worry about a virus.
Yeah, I think it. You like they've all been saying. It's essentially, you can't place yourself in their position. And while you think you can, and while you think, I'd risk anything to make that kind of money. That's an unrealistic expectation, especially for a lot of these guys who don't make that kind of money. There is only a certain percentage of the leagues that are millionaires, and it's the upper echelon of them. The average guy, the guy who's playing special teams, he's not. He's making good money. Don't get me wrong, but he's not a millionaire. And when you look at that and you say these things, you just, you don't want ever to criticize somebody for trying to put the health of themselves or their family above the game, because quite frankly, they ought to. That's where priorities should essentially be. But, like I said, as time progresses, we're still in July. It's not even, we're near August, but we're not there yet. And as time progresses and these things start to pan out, I do wonder because, unfortunately, we are seeing this be as an explosion of cases as opposed to a thinning of cases at this point. When we all thought, July and August, it's going to all thin out because that's the downtime for all these viruses. What happens when we get back to September and October? We haven't had that ease off yet. So, you're going to have more people, passing as some of these higher profile players start to opt out. Are more and more people going to opt out? What's Patrick Mahomes going to do if his entire starting offensive line decides to opt out? You don't know where this is going to go. Is I guess the point I'm trying to make. And you kind of just. I like that advice. Sit it out. If you're a troll, sit it out, because you're not going to come down on the right side here, and you need to just shut up.
Well, and I said it would be a hot take for me, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it in an unpopular thing too, but it's like, does that weigh in on your decision, if you're honest, on what might be a perceived sinking ship like the Patriots might be? Mm-hmm. I don't know, and I'm not there to say one way or the other, you know what I mean? It's kind of we're kind of towing the line on the other thing that popped up, Brian, too, and I was looking through some tweets here trying to find something else, was the whole now you got an anthem debate, and I don't get into these anthem debates. We don't talk politics on here, and you and I don't even see eye to eye on some things, and some other things we do. You know what I mean? Because you know what, we're rational human beings who talk to each other, and we're friends, and we bond over football and football's community. And I'm sure that'll be all the more the same whether you side with Stephon Tuitt standing or Zach Banner saying he may kneel. It's like, you have a right to do one or the other and support the guys no matter what. It's equally trollish. You know what I took from those tweets? It wasn't the anthem stuff. To me, it says these guys are looking to play. So these are two more guys that I don't have to worry about opting out of the season maybe. Now,
right.
With that out of the way, because that's all the more I'm going to address on that particular part of it, and we're going to talk about some other guys, but I want to come back to something that you were just saying too with, explosion of cases. It's relative to population centers and areas of the country too, and there's all kinds of different things that are going on. You got like Florida or South Carolina or whatever, like maybe higher, maybe they're like at 14% of all their cases, and who knows how many thousands of people that they're testing. But I know I'm in Ohio, and these things are so much different because you're in New Jersey, I'm in Ohio. We got Tina's in Iowa. We got Terry that's in Southern California, where they got like everybody like caged up basically. And it's just, there's different experiences all around the country and different levels of exposure. And they put in these rules for exposure too, so they're telling guys don't go to strip clubs. Believe it or not, there's strip clubs that are open here in Ohio where I live. And I kind of like, well, how does that really work? Is a mask going to protect me? Like, there's some very other dirty things about a strip club aside from whether, or is it just all social distance? Like, I don't even try to wrap my head around those things. But they told those guys, to stay away from certain things like that. So you got other rules and other penalties that may come in to effect because one of these boneheads or knuckleheads is going to go out and party, break the rule, and then they're going to have to go into self-quarantine for 10 or 14 days too, which is a whole other type of situation. But I kind of wonder, so the number in Ohio is like fluctuated between 5 and 6% of all cases, total cases being taken that are positive. And it's like, is a higher number better or worse? Because if you get a lot of guys that test right now, we hope that it's not something you could just go and catch again. And maybe you're over the hill, because we talked about that before. We talked about the chicken pox effect and how our parents would just have us go out there and get it as a kid and be done with it. And we don't know that that's the thing with this. And we joked about that with all the Clemson guys. Maybe that was like a month ago on one of these shows. They all tested. And so, I don't know if it's good or bad. I really don't. And is it good or bad in the sense that a high survivability rate from what we see? But what happens when it's the one guy that gets it that doesn't survive? And then it becomes a tragedy. There's just so many layers to this thing. So that's why you see some of the players calculating their risk factor and whether or not they're going to play. Then I start to get a little concerned with, well, who on the Steelers might decide to sit one of these out? Well, about an hour and a half ago or so, Steelers went and they tweeted and got some guys that are starting to show up for training camp. And I guess this is a good thing when you start to see Joe Hayden, Tyson Alualu, Marquise Pouncey, Bud Dupree, and I had already mentioned, some guys before. Tuitt and Banner sound like they're going to be there. But you had James Conner, and this came up, and it's already been shot down before we could even talk about it. So we came and explore whether or not he would play, because you have players like former cancer survivors or something. They're opting out, and immediately once that news came out, everybody starts to think James Conner is kind of like probably one of the NFL poster guys, let alone for just the Steelers as a cancer survivor. He was the one that was out there with the hashtag "We want to play," and he's in a contract year. There are several other running backs that are on the roster that could potentially fill the void if Connor's not there and push him out of the picture. Now, Connor has said, according to sources, that all indications is that he's been working hard and he's wanting to play this season. So you go sigh of relief because you don't lose one of your guys. Whew. You still worry about his personal safety and health in regard to all of this too. But it presents the difference and you alluded to it just a little bit ago, and we talked about this bring him back to the Patriots, Cam Newton. Here's a guy who just signed. He's been sitting there, no other teams maybe having as much interest or having the right opportunity. And does a guy like Cam Newton miss maybe the only window he may have? He may not get another chance to maybe be a starting quarterback in the NFL. Does he pass on that opportunity, particularly playing for Bill Belichick, the New England Patriots? You know what I mean? You get the same thing here with James Conner, maybe even a Juju Smith-Schuster. We talked about guys on the hot seat just a week or two ago. The guys that are on the hot seat got a lot more to lose than, say, Ben Roethlisberger, who's banking a lot of money. Now, Ben's got things that he probably wants to prove after already sitting out a year. But you could let this contract ride another year, another 2 years, whatever. And I'm not saying that Ben will, but that's a case example of you got a veteran who has maybe a little more security in their future towards some of the guys that are here that are still working on rookie deals and may have somebody that they're looking over their shoulder at as taking their spot should they choose to sit out.
Yeah, it's interesting the number of players who have opted out and the teams that they've opted out on. It is very speculative, and it does cause us all, especially in the back rooms of SCU, to start to. I'm wondering when the pool will begin, and we're all going to be asked to chip in, and whatever it'll be, one of those whatever they call elimination pools. Okay, who's going to be the next one to opt out? And we've tried.
Don't call it the Deadpool.
Yeah, I know. I avoided that. I didn't go there. I avoided that, and you just ruined it.
I went there. I ruined it. Dumb and Dumber. We're competing here.
Yeah. So it'll be. I just keep going through this in my head. I can envision a point in time over the next couple months, as we get closer and closer to an actual game being played, where, it's conceivable a game could be decided because of how many players opted out on that team, and things of that nature, and who those players were. The way that it all works. Look, from a Steelers standpoint, it's interesting because we just haven't heard, like you talked about James Conner. James Conner, by all, if you were to pick a guy on the team that you thought had the most incentive to opt out, it might be James Conner. He's got the health history. He's got the, other things. But at the same time, he's got that mentality of I want to prove everybody wrong. And, what you hear from him instead is, no, I'm going to play. Or what you hear through the grapevine. Same thing with the other guys. I mean, we speculated about this, and it'll break my heart if this is what happens. But I won't be mad at him if he chooses to do it. But one of the guys, based on how he's tweeted and based on the things he's said, that could potentially be an outer, so to speak. An outer? Did I just invent a phrase?
Otter.
And yeah, is the original grown ass man, Mr. Cameron Hayward. And look, if he does, he does, and I won't blame him for doing so. You got to make this decision for yourself. I would hate to see it happen because he's been so good, the last few years, and he continues to excel. And you'd hate to have him lose the season because when you get to a specific point in your career, like Cam is right now, it isn't just pushing a season off. You're kind of losing a season. Once you're in your 30s, you sit out, you're losing a season because you're not going to get it back. And that is also going to play into effect for some of these older guys. You talked about Ben. Man, has Ben been getting hammered over the last couple days with tweets and Twitter storms about stories about he's going to regress and he's no longer an upper echelon quarterback. He's all this stuff. He's got to be reading that and going, putting the big old bird up to everybody, and that's what he's wanting to do. He's wanting to flip the bird to everybody now.
Double birds.
Double whammy it at them. So I can't see that happening. But then again, here's a guy with a lot of young kids. And as much as kids seem to be resilient against this, You then read a story about a kid who doesn't have any pre-existing conditions that is in intensive care because of it. So that's the scariest thing about this thing is you just don't know how it's going to impact any one individual. You think the chances are good that it's recoverable. It's just those, as you said, it's the tragedy of those folks who, for whatever reason, just seem to be on the wrong side of this. And then on top of everything else, the fact that they're discovering new strains, the fact that it's evolving, the fact that you never know for sure how it's going to change over the next few months.
Well, Hayward was the one that I came up with on the top of my head just because of the way the negotiations were going. And I think we were assuming that he's now the player rep in place of the retired Ramon Foster, who had held that post for a long time as the Steelers player rep to the union. So I think he was involved, and Cam was like an assistant, deputy, whatever they call that within the organizational structure of it. But there's people, this stuff, I talk about the smoke and fire. Where there's smoke, there's fire type stuff. As soon as Wendell Smallwood got signed, everybody assumed Connor is going to be sitting out for the season. And it's just like correlation and causation. It's not the same things here. And why wouldn't you want to load up on running backs? Did you see the problem the Steelers had last year when they had Tony Brooks-James they brought in, and that didn't work out. Kareth White wasn't necessarily bad, but Connor went down, then Snell wasn't available, and we saw where Jalen Samuels would be. I would guess if somebody opts out, I don't know, it would. The highest profile name might be Cam Hayward. By the way, and I was using Ben as my example. Ben did report already, so probably a bad example to use. But Hayward is definitely now. Hayward's a guy that doesn't have a lot on his contract still either. And he, like you said, up at getting there, in your 30s and everything, and being in football shape and all of those different things is a little different. So, but I look at some guys that might have some rich contracts and might sit out, but you can't even say that about it looks like the secondary strong. Terrell Edmonds is there. I already mentioned Hayden. Steven Nelson's there as well. So I would assume you're going to see maybe Mike Hilton and who else was working out? We had that full tweet. Let me see if we could find this. Maybe you find it before me. Alex Highsmith had been working out in Pittsburgh with Brandon Jordan and a group of defensive linemen, including Cam Hayward, Stephon Tuitt, Tyson Alualu, and Dan McCullers just this last week. So maybe Cam's in. It sounds like Tuitt's in. He's thinking about what he's going to be doing for the anthem. Banner's thinking that same thing. Alualu is there. We just saw the pictures. So maybe this whole group of guys is there. We're going to have to start a tracker or something and start putting X's and O's next to circling names and seeing who's all going to be there. So I don't know who all has just had kids and if that's a concern or if it's going to be how tough it's going to be. Some of these guys are thinking about it in a military sense that they're going to be away overseas like you would be in Afghanistan for 6 or 12 or 18 months or whatever a tour might be and away from family. And that's the way they're already considering here July 28th through however long you end up playing. If there's a full season and then a postseason, you're going into almost the beginning of February. So, that's tough. That's what am I talking about here? 7 months? That's tough. And it's going to be a whole different type of sacrifice. So I guess depending on how these things all roll out, you kind of almost in the same breath of if you're feeling any type of frustration or disappointment by anybody that sits out, you really got to tip the cap to the guys that are going out there because it does take some courage when you don't know exactly the everything that's going on in this world. There's so much uncertainty. I really try to be fair with how I'm objective to some of these different things. And it's just, I don't know. I think there's a different culture. I think there's a culture change with some of the teams, or there isn't a structure there where I have a feeling the Steeler guys we've seen Switzer catching balls from Ben, and these guys aren't doing this under the premise of thinking they're not going to be playing. So I don't know who the outlier would be. I would have almost thought Bud Dupree might not be happy. He's playing under a franchise tag or whatever. He's reported already. It sounds like, there's the family thing. You got the Watts. And it's is JJ sounds like he's going to be playing. So that's got to trickle over to TJ and Derek too, you would think. There's, Devin Bush was just a rookie. You think he's going to be there? You would think with with some of the guys like Hayden and Nelson already there, and Edmonds, you guys, Minka. Where's Minka? Is Minka showing up here? David DeCastro, Villanueva. It's a very interesting and subjective thing, and I think it's going to be kind of intriguing as the coming weeks unfold. I mean, these guys got to start opting out. Like it's now or never. It's crap or get off the pot, right?
Yeah.
Because it's training camp time, and if you're under contract and you're not showing up, that was part of the thing too. Was like fines and associated with that. So they've got to keep their circle close to their own players, to everybody like that, and you just kind of hope. I don't know how the thing happened with baseball. And it's weird to me. I know they're traveling, and some people are like, well, they're traveling, and it's a problem. As opposed to Major League Soccer, they have their bubble. They're playing all their games at, like, Wide World of Sports and Disney down in Florida, and everybody stays in, like, they stay in a quarantine, and they get put in what's called the bubble, and nobody can go into the bubble without being quarantined, and they get reporters that are in that are part of the bubble, too, and it's an intriguing concept. And the NBA is doing, and NHL are doing similar things, too, and playing in the NHL for sure, playing in certain locations, and getting these games in and whatnot. And then baseball, they're still playing in their stadiums. They're flying, but they're not like on like commercial flights or these are chartered or private flights. And Brian, you were just a part of this. We both went on vacation. I drove, you flew, so we have both aspects of it. The only thing that really made me nervous about the travel and any type of contact or exposure, like I don't know about you personally, and I know there's different levels of comfort with everyone in their own health. And for me, I don't fear, but I'm also aware and I'm also precautious. You know what I mean? So when I go to like a roadside rest area, I'm thinking to myself, wash hands, watch what you're touching. I'm going to wear a mask. And those type of things, and those can get congested with people and things of that nature. I'm sure you felt the same way with flight travel and airline travel too.
Yeah, I've actually talked to several people about this. The only time on the entire trip out to Nevada and Utah and where we went that I felt at all concerned was on the planes. And so the trip back and the trip there, and the only reason is because you're very limited in how you can escape things, right? So you can do a lot of smart things when you're even in the casinos. You don't have to get close to people. You don't have to touch machines, and if you do, the casinos have all the hand sanitizer all over the daggone place. So every 10 feet you got a dispenser, and you can just keep sanitizing yourself until you've sanitized your skin and muscle away from your hands.
Lotion has become a necessity around the house too.
Yeah. But when you're on the plane, and it's funny, because you read stories about people turning flights around, and all these people are getting escorted off planes because they're refusing to wear their mask. You are at, to a certain extent, the mercy of those around you, in that as we've said repeatedly, the masks are not really there to protect you. They're there to protect others from you if you happen to be the one that is infected. So you're stuck because you're counting on the folks that are on that plane to do the right thing along with you. And I can tell you candidly, not all of them do.
Well, that's true of almost. That's true
everywhere. Yeah, I agree.
In coronavirus or not, you just get some like people that are just not very well kept or clean or anything like that. They just don't. I posted this on my own personal Facebook not long ago. It's like we're in the middle of what's considered a pandemic, and I witnessed a guy take a leak and then not wash his hands. And it's like I frowned upon that pandemic or not. Like, what the hell is wrong with you?
Yeah, it's I don't know. That's just gross. But you can't help but wonder. But that's the only time I ever felt like even remotely potentially susceptible. Right? That's the only places during that trip that I felt like if I'm gonna get it, here's where I'm gonna get it. Was on the plane. And so because you're surrounded by folks who you can't really get away from. And because I was foolish and took an American Airlines flight, and they sell the center seat, you don't even have that gap.
Man. Yeah.
So I was lucky enough. I sat in a window seat on the way back, and I sat in an exit seat on the way back, and I got bumped up to first class on the way out. So that was nice. So I really even on the plane, I was very limited in my exposure. But that's the only place that was moderately felt wrong or moderately risky to me. And I wouldn't, like you said, I wouldn't say that I feared anything. It's just that's the area where I was like, yeah, well, if something's going to happen, it'll probably be because of this.
Yeah, that's the way I felt about the rest stop rooms, and it's like when you're traveling through certain states and you're going through Appalachian Mountains, for example, and there isn't anything for 60 miles, including a gas station. This is where everybody's stopping. This is the place to be, man. And and then other people are traveling too. So are you aware of what the state rules are for like the 30-mile strip of Virginia you're driving through? You know what I mean? It's like
right.
it is weird. And I mean, I went through 7 different states, and it was a nice road trip. I mean, I enjoyed it. I haven't done a road trip like that in a while. But it's like every place you stopped, even if you wanted to eat, you weren't sure if you could do indoor dining or anything like that. And I'm wondering, like, how this is working with some of the teams. Probably are they all going to get catered food, or are they door dashing? Like, what are they doing in terms of that? But when you're on a plane, like you said, it's like a real confined, like, Bill Maher had a tweet, and it was somewhat sarcastic too about like not allowing people to go to like the sporting events in the stands, but you could put them in this, tiny metal capsule for hours at a time, and you're filtering the same air, and that could be creepy, but you got to assume too that if everybody, and this is human nature too, follow the rules, right? You have these rules, and or at least things that are out of courtesy, and you got people that are ignorant of it. Maybe they aren't aware, and then you got some people who are just like, well, I'm not going to do that, and it's just such a human nature type of thing. You know what I mean? It's like the guy who didn't wash his hands in the restroom. So it'll take this one knucklehead to screw this up. He's going to be the one that goes to the strip club and does the private deal, and then he's going to get on the plane and then just get everybody infected. And then you're not going to have enough guys that you're going to see guys playing offense and defense, and it can get ugly. And very well that could be a possibility. You never know.
Absolutely.
Tyson Lulu had one snap as a fullback last year, out of necessity. Necessity, the mother of invention, right? So, and I got that quote right for a change. Man, I'll tell you. I did. I'm proud of myself. So I guess we're going to still be on Steelers watch. I'm sure some more players will be showing up or whatever during this reporting period, which started today, and we'll see how it goes. So some more things that the acclimation period, which will begin on Monday, August 3rd, and go through the 11th. And it says, during this time, teams will follow the same guidelines as Phase 1 of the off-season program, with on-field activity, strictly strength and conditioning and walkthrough periods. No conditioning tests are permitted. Only the team's strength and conditioning coaches will be on the field, and no helmets permitted. Oh, this is a good thing to bring up, too, because we were talking about the, masks, breathing on each other or whatever with the plane. You made me think of the Oakley face shield thing that they're putting in, and it has like the spokes and stuff in it. And man, I'll tell you what, if you do that and you have the visor, and I'm sure the visor becomes a problem sometimes too on the face mask. If you wear glasses, and I'm not you wear glasses.
Yep.
I just wearing sunglasses with a mask, and the damn things fog up pretty easy, man.
They sure do.
I mean, I know you're outdoors. I don't know how that little face shield thing that they have, it's like an additional piece that goes on the face mask, exactly what it would look like, a shield across the mouth portion, and you're breathing into there. I don't know. I really don't know how that'll work. We may see some players wearing it, or at least I think they'll at least try it, and we'll get to see what it looks like. But man, I don't see it being practical, especially, somebody brought up if you're in like Denver, for example, you're already sucking wind and going to the sideline for some O2 and, using the the tanks and the mask to get some more oxygen into your body. And I know some people had also made mention that you got the training masks that some different athletes wear, and it's usually for high altitude training. I mean, it literally, you don't get enough oxygen. You need oxygen. You got to be able to breathe. That's why you got substitutes in the games. The Connor, even when healthy, isn't in there all the time. The only guys that usually are your offensive linemen and Ben, even wide receivers. Even when AB was, at his top prime, he wasn't always 100% participant in games. Now we're talking about, here, let's add something else that may make it more difficult for you to breathe. I'm not going to say it will. I'm saying it could. So that's going to be something that people are testing out. So on that note with the helmets, you give a gradual ramp-up period, August 12th to 16th. Period will include 4 days of ramp-up and 1 day off. First 2 days will be similar to Phase 2 of the off-season program. Coaches are permitted on the field, and players can wear helmets. So this is when we're still a little ways off, 2-3 weeks here before we start to, maybe we'll see some stuff, you know what I mean? Aside from just strength and conditioning. And I have a feeling the strength and conditioning is also a safety type deal because maybe some of these guys, like I said, have been couch potatoes and haven't been working out. Certainly is possible and got lazy. You know what I mean? They weren't required to go to an OTA or a mini camp to get that ramp up of conditioning. So now you got players who can wear helmets. They can take part in individual player instruction and drills. And it's an interesting date because the 12th to the 16th here, if you were looking at the traditional schedule that the Steelers are supposed to have, they would have already had the Hall of Fame game on August 6th. So they're not even putting on helmets until a week after. They would have already been, at camp. We would have been looking at this in a week from Thursday, Brian, Hall of Fame game, and we would have been, and we would have been at the ceremony a week from Saturday on the 8th. So the timeline is definitely shifted, and that's the reason why I think they had scrapped these preseason games too. So the ramp up. A lot of this is on the Steelers website if you want to go and review it. It's just a matter of you start to get to full speed non-contact practices, 7-on-7, 11-on-11, but no live contact. And then you start to get the contact from the 17th all the way up to September 6th. They're going to have their first practice in pads. 90-minute time limit. Practice can be extended by 15 minutes in the following days with 2.5 hours being maximum time. Steelers can hold a maximum of 14 practices in pads during this 21-day period. So that's 2/3 of them. There's mandatory days off every 7 days. So it really seems like they have crammed the mini camps and the training camps, scrapped the preseason. I'm wondering, this is the thing that I wonder the most out of all this. We usually get sloppy September football. That's putting it kindly, because you got guys who don't play in preseason games. This is literally like, this is taking your car and this is the roller coaster. You're starting to go up, and then you're going to come down fast paced, and you're going to go right down into that dip that is the regular season. That's September 6th, and the Steelers' first game on the schedule against the Giants is it's not the following week on the 13th, but it is the Monday night game on. Did I say? I'm sorry. So it goes to September 6th. The following weekend, Sunday, September 13th, is the first week of the regular season, but the Steelers play on Monday the 14th for that Monday night football game against the Giants that they've already said will not have any fans. So, I mean, this is you just got to hope, aside from the coronavirus thing, that this seems like a real hot, heavy, fast-paced type of and grueling type of practice regimen, maybe even more so than what they're accustomed to. It seems like everything's been thrown in here, and then they're immediately going to jump right into the season. And this is going to be an intriguing time, and hopefully everyone can stay healthy aside from any type of virus concerns.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be a different kind of year, and the fact that these guys are not getting their bodies acclimated to actual football by not, because there's only so much you go, even when you go full speed in practice, right? And as Craig Wolfley often says, you have to get your body acclimatized to take the pounding that football requires. So where we normally have a couple weeks, maybe a month of some less than stellar performances, we could be looking at more. Who knows? These guys are going to take some time to get ready. There's no question about that. And you bring up the injury bug, and that's got to be the biggest concern for most of these guys, is that you go from practice to full speed contact stuff, and you just can't help but wonder, is this going to be an injury plagued season, not just Steelers related, but league wide, because of the lack of conditioning that is likely to be prevalent. And you mentioned that Giants game. I'm really interested to see, and I know that they've done some interesting things to try and make it less surreal for the players, like piping in crowd noise and things of that nature. How bizarre will it have to be to play in Giants Stadium that's empty?
I've actually done. I worked a game many years ago.
Well, that's soccer. We expect that.
No. This is a little bit different. This is a little bit different of a story, actually, of how creepy it was. So it was a women's soccer game at Marshall University, probably 10 years ago, and they play on a grass field that's behind the regular collegiate stadium that probably holds 30-some thousand people at a minimum. A very large cavernous stadium, and it was a Sunday. And, we were there and things got delayed and the field was waterlogged. And I forgot who the opponent was that came in, but it's not easy to get to Huntington, West Virginia, and it costs money to bus the kids in, the college athletes. So you need to play this game. It was probably a conference game or something too that had higher importance, that you want to get this on your record so you have standing for the NCAA tournament. So they moved the game into the football stadium, which is not lined for soccer. And they had to put up, they had to make some concessions. I won't say anything ill in case there's some administrator out there that hears this. Probably soccer should not have been played on the field by the dimensions or whatever, but it was someone somewhere with a higher title and higher paying job than me said that this was okay and this is the way we were going to go through with it. So literally maybe 10 people in the stands of a 30,000 seat stadium, and that's what I think of, and it's a bowl stadium too. So that is just that's what I think of from my own personal experience, and it was dead as a doornail. But you could hear the players, at least they're talking to each other, but it's almost like cavernous. You're go to shout an instruction. It's like, are you gonna be able to hear what people say in the other huddle?
Yeah,
I mean, it's almost like an echo in there. So. Absolutely. And don't forget though, the crowd noise thing, I don't know what the NFL is going to do, but the Major League Soccer games, I think baseball too. Is baseball doing it live in the stadium, or are they only doing it for the television broadcast? Because I know for the soccer games, they're not. It's whatever. And they're playing at night, so that probably helps some. You don't see stands or anything, and there isn't much that's there down at Disney. I mean, they use it, it's not a stadium type setting whatsoever. And
right.
But I guess you'd be used to maybe practicing on it. And right now, the Steelers are going to get acclimated to it. They're in Heinz Field. They're in an empty Heinz Field right now that has been lined, and they've been preparing for training camp. So I think they'll at least be used to it being like a ghost town. And if they do allow even a third of the fans or whatever in, I do think that gives them a little bit of an advantage there, Brian. I know we talked about that on the previous podcast. It's just, I would like to know what all is going on, just for the sake of, season ticket holders or whatever. It's like, hey, you got our money. Time to start refunding preseason money and let us know. Are we getting 1 or 2 games or whatever, so we could make some type of plans, even if those plans get canceled. So, but I think the Steelers will be better equipped at that. I can't speak for every team, and I think it's still going to be a little. Obviously, it's not going to be normal, and we hate the word new normal, so it's definitely not going to be the new normal, because there's no way, I would think, that you go to the following season in 2021 without fans either. You would want to knock on wood on that, but, you got these giant stadiums, and it's Giant Stadium.
Yeah.
That it's just going to be empty. It's even bigger than Heinz Field. So, but again, we can't say that. Steelers Nation travels. I was going to say that's almost an advantage not having the opponent fans there on the road. It is, but usually with the Steelers, it's not a problem.
Right. No, and there would have been enough Steelers fans in that Giant Stadium that I don't think it would have been I don't know if it would have been San Diego from a couple years ago, but it would have been there'd be a considerable number. So I'm just I'm perplexed and captivated. I just can't wait to see what happens. As time goes by, whether I'm in a stadium, whether I'm sitting at home on my couch watching TV, which actually never happens because if I'm sitting at home, I won't be sitting, I'll be pacing.
Yeah.
But no matter how it is, I'm just hopeful that we have football because I can't get through the winter without it. So I need it.
No, and we can't do the replays of Super Bowls and things like that. That's just not going to cut it. If anything, I don't know. We need something. So hopefully, well, I guess we'll see where it goes from here. And we're already up against it. And I don't know. I think we touched most of the bases with the current events that are going on. And we'll see who else reports and who else doesn't here in the very near future. And and hopefully we have some more things to talk about because strength and conditioning isn't going to be one of them, unfortunately. But usually this is around the time where we're getting all geeked up to go out to Latrobe, and now it's not going to happen, unfortunately. But
not going to happen.
Yeah.
I can only describe bench presses so many times, and then
it's like the it's like the combine. I mean, it's not going to be anything.
It's even worse.
Yeah,
because we can't even. It's even worse because at least at the combine, you were pitting guys against each other, wondering who's going to be on your team. Here, you know who you got, and you're like, if Stephon Tuitt doesn't do 57 bench presses or whatever, you don't go, oh well, that's a disappointing bench press from Stephon Tuitt there, and it's a different mentality, right? This is conditioning; it's not the other stuff. So,
well, yeah, that's the other thing. You're not going to push out. I need to do 25 and then tear a bicep or something. You know what I mean? Or tear a pec muscle. It's completely different mentality there as well. So it's like you can't get geeked up about it whatsoever. So, well, Brian, I think that puts a bow on it then, my friend. So who won? Who's Dumb and Dumber?
I declare a tie.
A tie. A truce.
A truce. Yeah. If I had actually said truce, then I'd have won.
Yes, you would. Yes, you would have. I know you were fishing for it. It's like when you can't think of the right word sometimes right off the top of your head. But hey, it's always good being with you. Always good having our listeners out there supporting everything. And stick around, and hopefully we have some more good news here in the coming days and weeks. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. My name's Joe. His name's Brian. And until next time, we encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.